Marin, thanks for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to dive into what you're working on. You are literally building the future of search. So I want to just tell me what that even means. Like, what are you building?
All right, thank you, Brian, so much for having me. Right, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of Omnisearch, and what we basically do is we're building, like you said, the future of search. We also like to grandly call it the search for everything. And what this essentially means is you have a search product, kind of if you're trying to, compare it to something that's already in the market, it's not like Google or these other B2C search tools. It would be more like an Algolia or an Elastic or something like this. But what the differentiating factor is that we are able to index and search way, way, way more than just text and make it easily work out of the box. So, audio and video materials, docs, images, presentations, plain text, all this you can just, as a customer, ingest into OmniSearch. We'll parse it, we'll extract all the relevant information, and then you can search either through a web UI or by integrating it into your own sites, your own experiences. And so, just to give you a little bit of an illustration, and I realize I might be, going a little bit vehemently now, but just to give you a quick illustration of what this looks like. Imagine you're indexing a large database of videos. And so, you might be interested in, where has a quote been uttered? And then find those exact moments, consume that little piece of information and do other more productive stuff. Or you might be interested in images, in, objects or persons or, stuff of this sort. So it's really a very, very broad range of queries and query types that we support out of the box.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's an interesting example there. So like the quote being uttered, I have to imagine just kind of just reading your website and talking to you previously that you're probably using a lot of machine learning in your search algorithms. And so if you're searching for a quote, I mean, do you have to like put it in exactly how it's said, or is there some kind of like being in the general neighborhood of what the quote is, kind of getting like the context, would it still be able to find that quote amongst maybe like petabytes of video files?
Right. Okay. So this is actually a really, really good question, because I think, let's stick to the audio parts, because that was, one of the, or probably like the earliest thing that we ever did. So right now, yeah, what you'll basically do is you'll convert everything to textual representations and then work on those. So what we'll generally have is, a fair bit of semantic tolerance, typo tolerance, synonyms, and so forth. It's not, I would say, as it can't handle it as fuzzily as you would with, regular vector search. But then again, with those kinds of approaches, you can't pinpoint the results as exactly as you can with ours. So it's, I would say it has a fair bit of, semantic fault tolerance, typo tolerance, and so forth, but it isn't necessarily as fuzzy as you would get in some other systems.
Okay. Are you guys the only people that you know of working on this, or obviously like Algolia and Elasticsearch you mentioned? I mean, they're doing some of this kind of stuff, but is there other companies working on this? Or are you guys first in the market?
I would say like we're first in the market when it comes to the sheer, volume of different things that we cover. So, the one of the cool things about us is that, and this is kind of, one of our main value props that we focus on in the pitch. Like, if you're a customer that's looking at search vendors, we are probably like the only one, I would say, and not to get too cocky about it, that can solve all your search needs. So if you have like a specialized, I don't know, video search tool, like a 12 or something like this, it can still be fairly, complex to intertwine that with the other search solutions you're using. You still might need one for text, like an Algolia or an Elastic or something like this. Whereas with us, you just get, everything inside one system, one vendor. And you also, this is really cool because you get a holistic view of your entire database. So you don't need to, deal with interleaving these results, displaying these results differently, pagination, ranking, and so forth. So, with us, I would say we're the first to market that just handles all of this stuff neatly.
Yeah, and so like if I'm embedding your product, let's say in an application, and I have all these different types of files, PDFs, PowerPoints, video, audio, relational database, JSON, document, like MongoDB type database, whatever else. Like maybe I have some weird, like, application specific file types as well. And you can go search all that. Now, like, let's say it's a video. Let's say like the results have, a combination of videos and some PDFs and some PowerPoints. Do you respond? Like, does your search product respond to the query, like on the programmatic side, like an API response, have like the document, like the file, that the specific file and like the specific page, or like
like basically you get a really good level of granularity. So what you'll get, like you said, so API would be kind of the most prevalent way that people use it. Basically, because the main thing that we're targeting is, people integrating us into their sites, into their platforms, into their apps, whatever. And so basically the API is the core way in which you both ingest data and then perform the search queries. So what you'll essentially end up getting is, a JSON response that has the documents, with pages, bounding boxes, timestamps, whatever. Like there's, kind of a concept of a position there that is dependent on the file.
That's what
type.
I was trying to get to, like how, so you kind of do that position of where the result is found.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easy on a web page because Google can do that thing where they just sort of like jump you to that part of the page. They have like that URL fragment thing, the hash symbol, and then like the quoted text, and you can like jump right to that part of the page and it's highlighted in yellow. But yeah, like when you have all these different types of documents, like that has to be probably pretty complex to deal with this like concept of position, because the definition of position is very different depending on the type of file.
Very different. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's like, tell me about, like, I was looking at your LinkedIn. What you started at, what, AWS?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, like,
actually,
what were you doing?
I was at MemSQL, or nowadays Single Store, before that, and then an intern at Facebook before that. But yeah, okay. AWS was kind of like the fundamental thing that I did prior to doing startups.
Yeah, you were there the longest, I saw, like almost 3 years at AWS. Yeah, so what did you work on at AWS? It says S3 on your LinkedIn.
Oh yes, S3. That's exactly right. So actually, when I was interviewing for Amazon is kind of different than the other, at least from my understanding, than the other FANGs or Magmas, whatever they're called nowadays. I don't even know. But in that it allows you to select a team even when you're doing interviews. So not just, you just randomly interview for the whole company, you get thrown into a pool, and then people either draft you or you get randomly assigned to a team. So with Amazon, it's pretty different, because you do get to interview for a team. And so my thinking at that point in time was, AWS is exciting, cloud is exciting. I'm, very interested in distributed systems. I think I do have something of a knack for it. So, I feel like I might just, apply for an AWS job on a team that, checks all those boxes. And so I got to S3 as really one of the coolest one that I could find at that point. And essentially, applied for a job there, got in. And basically my team over there was in charge of, making sure not to go into too many details, because, NDAs and all that beautiful stuff, but making sure that out of the like 3 core parts of S3, the trickiest one for scaling actually scaled, so that it didn't fall over when you have like these trillions of objects and millions of requests per second, whatever. So basically, it was a very cool team, a very senior team, and making sure, like the fact that S3 hasn't fallen over is very nice. So we're very proud of that.
So a couple of questions, a couple of threads I want to go on this. Yes, first, was Shel Kaplan the original architect of AWS and S3, or who originally architected S3?
Well, Shel Kaplan, I think, was probably out before AWS happened. Because I think like Shel Kaplan was there at the very beginning of Amazon, but not of AWS, since AWS would have been about like 12 years after Amazon.com, right? So I think that you don't have like one specific guy who built S3. There's a couple of guys. There's Alan Vermeulen, who even became the CTO of Amazon at one point. There's Sorensen. There's a bunch of these guys, and I'm sure if I started checking the names, then people would feel left out that were there at the very beginnings. But there was a bunch of dudes that are currently at like either senior principal or more often like distinguished engineer or VP levels.
Nice. And then we were talking a couple of weeks ago. S3 launched in 2006, I think.
I think so.
And you were telling me that some of the underlying architecture of S3 that was built in 2006 is still largely in place today.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think that basically when I was there, and again, I'm very limited on the specifics that I can go into, but yes, it aged very gracefully. That there were things that, needed to be changed, but, if you looked at what it looked like when I joined, there was still a lot of things that were overlapping with what you actually had in the very early days.
Just for the listeners too, we were talking about Shel Kaplan a moment ago. If you're not familiar with who Shel Kaplan is, obviously you are, Marin, but for the listeners who may not be, Shel Kaplan was the first hire by Jeff Bezos. He was literally employee number one at Amazon. And he was a software developer, and there's like a famous job posting by Jeff Bezos, like in the early days when it was still in the garage. I'm not going to quote it verbatim, but it was something along the lines of, must be able to build complex applications in roughly 1/3 the time that any competent engineer thinks is possible.
I like the description, and Shell obviously was, because like the initial team over there was pretty hardcore. Like, they did a lot of lists, believe it or not. So I don't know if you remember Steve Yeager's, am I saying that right? Blogs. But he was going into some of the early war stories at Amazon, because he was first at Amazon, then at Google. So he saw all of these things up front. So definitely a very hardcore team in the very early days, as was the team that built AWS. That's also a very hardcore team.
Yeah, that's cool. What was it like working at AWS? I guess you were kind of there, like, into the maturity of AWS and Amazon as a whole. I mean, it was already like, Fortune 10 probably at that point, and just massive Goliath. But like, what's it like working there?
So I would say, that there's everything, like every job will have its, pros and cons. I would say that what is good there, and that's kind of an extreme case of what you'll sometimes see in big tech, is you really get to witness a masterclass of like, distributed systems, scalability, all these, important concepts that back when we were taking distributed systems in college, the examples there would have been like, I don't know, simple client server architectures, or, something that at most had a couple of machines. Then you go to S3, and that's like hundreds of thousands of machines. So, you definitely, like, your intuitions about this, your ways of reasoning about systems, they change very fundamentally in ways that you couldn't do in smaller companies. So, the deep dives, the ability to specialize in a really important topic and go really deeply into it, that was the best part. And I really loved the people that I worked with. The senior engineers on my team were phenomenal. The rest of the guys were phenomenal. So really great over there. The downside of S3, like you alluded to this, it's a very mature product, which means there's no, cowboy-ish approach. There's no major, incentive, I would even say, to ship it super fast. Rather, it's like, don't break. First order of business, don't break things. So that can be a little bit frustrating when you're an young, eager beaver and want to ship things, get things into production as soon as you can. And then it's like, but did you think of this angle? And then you got to think about that angle. So it helps with discipline, but maybe it's not the most exciting part.
I want to take a quick break from the episode and say, if you're enjoying this content, the best way you can say thank you is to subscribe. So if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you're on one of the podcast platforms, hit the subscribe button there as well. And also share it out to your friends and colleagues. If you find this content useful and you think other people will enjoy it as well, please send it out. And back to the episode. I saw Facebook used to have that term, move fast and break things.
Mhm.
That might have been, still in play around the time you were there.
That died.
Yeah, I've seen.
They retired that one. They retired that one. Even Facebook.
I guess by 2013, that was probably what, 2004, 2008. They were moving fast.
No, so 2013, I think it was still there, but they retired it recently.
Yeah, so the new one I've seen is move fast and ship working software.
Which doesn't really have the same ring to it. It looks a bit sterilized. But okay, appropriate for a Fortune 10 company, yes.
All right, so I can see the natural progression now, talking through your time at S3 and Amazon, AWS specifically, and then now what you're doing with Omnisearch. I can see this natural progression from what you were working on with S3 and the types of this S3 is for the listeners, it's storage containers for developers to put data into. So you can put basically any type of data, any type of files, or you can host websites, you can host HTML, you can point things at S3 and use it for storing PDFs or audio or video files or whatever. You can do a lot of stuff with S3, but it's basically this kind of catch-all bucket that you can put things in on the AWS ecosystem. And I could see how Omnisearch is kind of, taking that concept to the next level with making it super indexable and searchable. I think S3 doesn't really have an indexable. I guess you can put Elasticsearch on it probably, right?
I think you have certain of these things that you can do on top of S3. So there's even the project called S3 Select. There's Athena. So there's ways to mine the data that's on S3, to search the data that's on S3, but not if it's not well-structured data, I think, at least not to my knowledge. So you can do searches on CSVs. You can do searches on maybe JSONs, probably just, or Parquet files, or other types of files that are very neatly structured. So you can do that on S3, probably even natively. At least that was the case even when I was there. But you can't do much with, more richer, less exact data types.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So basically, I can see the transition you made in your head from, all right, we have this awesome document storage system that's scales really well. And then, all right, but how do we search it?
Yeah, actually, there's another motivational Amazon story that actually triggered it. So, when you have an idea, it's always somewhat difficult to backtrack and see how this came about, because it'll be stuff that gestates for a while, and that's it's a neural net, so it takes a bunch of inputs. So S3 and other distributed systems, my co-founder was also at a database company. So there were all these things that we were taking into account and the knowledge that we acquired there. But, the main trigger was actually for Omnisearch so you can imagine S3 is a very technically complex team, as is any AWS team. I can be diplomatic and say any team at a big tech company, but AWS particularly. But basically what we then had as one of the nicer resources within Amazon is you had a ton of these video training materials. And so these would be, videos lectures where you had these legends, like the guys that we mentioned, explaining things, drawing architecture, doing deep dives, and just explaining a lot of these difficult technical concepts in, reasonably simple terms, right? And so you would have these massive archives, hundreds of these videos that were all hour long, and problem was you couldn't find information inside those. You could find a video, you could find something in a description, but there was no way to just consume that little snippet of information that you cared about, jump straight to the point where it's explained, consume it, and then be on your way. So that kind of annoyed me, because it this is one of the cases where the, search paradigm that was predominantly just based on text kind of showed its age.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. So that's very specific use case there. And then so that was so you were at Amazon like in 2016 to 2019. You started Omnisearch in March 21. So you've been doing that for about
one company
years.
in between, yeah.
Yeah, what was the other one? What was QN Technologies?
It was basically like, how familiar are you with, the tech sector in China?
Not
at all. Okay, fine. So basically what this did, what QN aimed to do as my, initial startup, it was basically a news aggregator and recommender that was kind of AI powered and had like vector search and recommendations in the background. And so it is like, basically it would be what the product was. It was an app, a news app that aggregated, news from, 200 different high quality sources. And then it built you a custom feed that, reacted to your clicks, your behaviors, your reading patterns, and would kind of like,
it's kind of like the Google News feed, basically.
It's kind of like the Google News feed, yes, except the Google News feed wasn't quite as integrated into everything, especially on Android at that point. So that's where I kind of saw the opening.
Alas, it is now, like you just swipe left and it's
yes,
right there.
It's the default, yeah.
I thought it was pretty integrated back then. It wasn't?
Not as much. Like
when did they add the swipe left feature so you could just go right into the news feed?
Like, so on my previous cell phone, so this cell phone I think is like 3 years old. So on the previous one, I don't remember having it. It was a very specific extra app.
Okay, interesting.
But so, like, why am I referring to China here? So this is by the way another fun fact. The dudes that build TikTok or whatever, bought TikTok, but built the Chinese counterpart. So
ByteDance, you're talking about?
I'm talking about ByteDance, yes. So ByteDance essentially started off with the Toutiao app, which is exactly this, right? So this was their first big hit in China, their first, massive influx of advertising dough that they could then use to subsidize the user growth for TikTok. So, this was something that I had read up on even while I was at Amazon, and figured that I should give it a shot. So the fact that it didn't pan out didn't mean that it was not a well thought out thing. It's just that the timing was a bit off.
Yeah, what's the post-mortem on that one? Like how and when did you put it to bed and why? And then like what was like the post-mortem analysis?
So I mean, the post-mortem was for me like, don't overcommit on B2C stuff. It's still by far the coolest thing when it comes to, relatively seamless growth, because we all know, the legends of Facebook and Twitter and even the like Ubers and apps of this sort. But the problem is that there's just too much, flaky psychology, as well as, market arcana that goes into this. Whereas if you go B2B, then you can kind of get a reasonable picture of what customers are asking for, and then kind of tailor it a little bit more towards what they actually need and what they're actually paying for. So
I'm definitely a B2B guy myself. There's like some magic or wizardry to like nailing.
Nowadays, I think everyone is. I mean, it's like this Nikita Beer guy. You know this dude, right?
Yeah. What was the gas app or whatever?
Yeah. So, but he basically, I think he had, in the meantime, he launched like 7 apps and all of them flopped. So this is just something that, B2C is really amazing if you can. It's amazing if you get it right, but in my view, you probably should try not to overcommit to a single product.
But when you hit those businesses, they can hit really big. Otherwise, you end up just like going and going and going and going, and then it just all crashes. I had a guy on a. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So like you'll have these examples, like Clubhouse seemed like it was gonna.
I was literally just gonna say Clubhouse, man.
It's like. So careful with B2C is my main takeaway. The other thing is, well, apart from this, it was just a really good school, a really good crash course, because I got to put my algorithm skills to good use to build a real world product. I got to learn a fair bit of like design and marketing and, social media and so forth. So it was actually really useful.
Cool, cool. Did you do like a Medium article? A lot of founders do their Medium article when they put their startup to bed, at the end of life. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, it's reasonably a sufficient amount of time has elapsed that the pain, the anguish is no longer there. So I think I might.
Yeah, that's cool.
The gist of it is like, dude, don't base your business model on selling ads. It almost certainly will not work unless you achieve really big scale.
It's tough. I'm involved in another company that has that just like did an acquisition, and the acquired asset was monetized on ads, but the way that the company is going to monetize that asset is through like a B2B sales channel, not ads, but like selling. It's basically like a data product, and the monetization is like 100x, or like it's like more than 10x. It's like the traffic is like monetized. It might not be 100x, but it's like more than 10x for sure, and it's like many tens of x higher than monetizing through CPM, cost per mile, or ads basically.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. If you don't have massive scale, don't.
Yeah. Unless you're Google, then do it.
Well, that's the massive scale part. Like even Twitter isn't monetizing that well on ads.
Well, dude, Twitter ads suck, man. Have you ever tried to use Twitter ads?
Yeah, I haven't, but I see what they throw at me, and that's pretty bad.
Their ad platform is terrible, but like Bing.
Is it just Bitcoin scammers there? Is there something else rather than Bitcoin scammers?
Well, oh yeah, right. Yeah, it's all like Bitcoin scammers, and then there's weird like consumer products that are like tchotchke like gimmicks, or they're like weird, like they're things that like no one's ever going to use, but they're just like kind of like interesting. I think that's the thing with Twitter. Like, it's no one's going to click on your ad unless it's like really interesting for some reason.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
Because like Twitter's all about like interesting bites. Like you have to hit that. Like you have to like it's, I guess it's like the
similar to tweets as such.
What's that?
Similar to the ads in that sense are similar to tweets themselves. Like you
exactly.
need to be very attention grabbing.
And we're calling it Twitter. It's X now. So what do we call it when we like tweet? Is it called Xing now? Like, am I Xing on X?
I don't even know. It's a very dynamic landscape.
That's a good way to put it.
I mean, it is like I don't know. Like I feel that I'm just Elon Musk, and we're gonna get into controversial territory, but he's like one of the greatest founders ever in tech.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, I agree.
I get like very nihilistic about the effect that anyone has on Twitter as a business. It's just like Twitter as a business, as a platform, sure, okay, but like Twitter as a business, you've had Jack, you've had Ev Williams, you've had Costolo, you've had Jack again, you've had the other dude, you have Musk, now you have the lady from what, NBC? What I don't remember actually.
Yeah, she's a media. She's like she basically built the ads revenue stream business. Like she's extremely experienced in ad sales.
Yeah. So like, but it seems to me you put any of them over there, it's gonna be basically the same thing. And I know that people are gonna try to spin, the Elon thing as though it's a huge thing. And there are differences in, policing speech and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, especially from a business standpoint, I don't know. Like I might be proven wrong, but I just get very, shall we say, nihilistic in terms of what happens to this as a business.
Well, tying it back to China, you were bringing up China earlier. I think from what I gather from hearing Elon Musk talk about it, his strategy with X.com, and like he brought X back from his early PayPal days, like pre-PayPal, he had
Yes.
X.com, which
Yeah.
was the
Or rather one of the components of PayPal.
yeah,
Straight.
like PayPal and X merged.
Yeah.
PayPal was Peter Thiel, and
PayPal was Peter Thiel and Max Levchin,
yeah,
plus the other co-founders that I don't remember. There was a
David
bunch of
Sachs
co-founders
and
overall.
Reid Hoffman, and there was a
Yeah,
bunch
yeah.
of like Goliaths involved in that, the PayPal mafia. And X and PayPal were like across the street from each other somewhere in Silicon Valley, I think Palo Alto or somewhere. And they were like right down the street from each other, and they were like both dying because they were trying to fight fraud. So they ended up merging. They're like, we can't fight fraud separately, so let's just merge and we'll fight fraud together because there's so much like payment fraud. And ultimately, they won. Obviously, PayPal won as a business. Elon Musk got kicked out. He eventually bought X.com back from PayPal later for an undisclosed amount, just because they're like, what the hell, we're not using this. And I think his vision for X.com now is to build WeChat, which is the everything app in China.
I think that he is not the first Westerner to play with the idea of building WeChat. I don't know. I'm skeptical of it because it just seems to me that everyone is so used to having separate apps. And also like Twitter actually isn't something that has such a massive user base. Like Twitter's always been a bit more of an elite toy than Facebook or Instagram even, or any of these apps. So it seems to me like you don't really have the user base to pull that off, not properly, because I would say like more people use Uber. I'm not sure whether that's the case. And so if you now try competing, because like one of the things in WeChat is you've got these mini apps that basically like replicate any kind of functionality of what in the West would just be apps. So
I
you'll
wonder
have
if the Chinese government is kind of like, sort of like this, like, board member, let's call it. Like they have like essentially effectively a board seat on every tech company or every company in the country. They kind of like, play the puppet master.
yes,
So I
yes.
wonder if like WeChat is just like maybe the only reason it exists. I'm just like theorizing here. I don't know. I don't have any like facts to back this up, but I wonder if WeChat only exists because it's easier to centralize all the data and track the data as through one pipeline, as opposed to like having 20 companies all separately.
See, in China, it's always very difficult. And, now we can play geopolitical analysts, which, by the way, is a fun pastime. But it's very difficult in China, I feel, to delineate between, the market forces and the CCP forces. And so my intuition would actually say that, that the configuration that you had in the tech scene with Alibaba and Tencent and a couple of these other guys being dominant, that actually arose due to market forces within China, because they were very good at keeping the garden walled and not allowing Western companies in, but market forces within a $1.5 billion market, 1.5 billion person market nonetheless. So I would say that it arose due to market conditions. The way that it's kept as it is might be the reason you're saying yes.
Yeah, interesting. And WeChat in particular seems to be that way. But I mean, yeah, look at what happened with Alibaba with Jack Ma. I mean, he's hiding in Singapore now. I mean, he basically got kind of like, he was put in jail or something for a while, wasn't he?
That's undisclosed, yes, but that there was something not unsavory.
It was basically because he said, like, he got so big, he basically became the Jeff Bezos of China, controlling commerce and cloud. And then China said, "You're too powerful. You need to listen to us." And he said, "No, I'm going to do what I think is best for my business and for the market." And they said, "Okay, then." They're like, "All right, we're going to knock you down then."
Yeah, not the kind of place I would choose to either live or do business in.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But
Um, And
Yes.
I have no firsthand experience on any of this stuff. Like I'm not there. I'm not like, I'm just kind of like reading the takes, but yeah, it's super super wild. But all right, let's move on here. So we kind of covered what you're doing at Omnisearch now. What's the future of search, man? Like I've had a few SEO people on the show recently, and we're talking about the concept of the 10 blue links, and is that going to exist in the future? And some people are saying like, no, 10 blue links is dead. We're going to be going to like interactive chat. Other people are saying, well, there's like, humans are creatures of habit, and it's going to be difficult to like break the 10 blue link paradigm because it's a habit, and people are still going to use it for a while. So it's going to like, there's going to be a legacy 10 blue links. There's also going to be like a modern chat search feature of, major search engines. And, so there's like conflicting ideologies or theories on what the future of search looks like. But what do you think, like as humans and technology, as technology advances and humans start to consume the latest tech products, what do you think that experience is going to be like for people?
That is tough. I think that I've kind of vacillated on this myself, but I think that the 10 blue links won't die. It just seems to me that yes, for starters, humans are a creature of habit, but two, it's a lightning fast thing. Like the problem with a lot of the chats is, and this might just be a technical glitch that's going to get optimized away, but the fact is that they're just not very fast. And so like, but by the time that, you've typed in something and, already navigated all the way to your results, you might just be looking at, an LLM spewing out the responses. And certain of the things, like for instance, the factuality and, the hallucinations, those I think are technical issues that can be worked around. I think they can be solved. You might have some trade-offs in terms of expressiveness, but those I think can ultimately be solved. I think it's more a matter of performance.
Performance just meaning like the time to response, the time to get the answer.
Yeah, I would say so.
I do think that'll be solved. I mean, especially like if we get this superconductor, this LK99 stuff working. But I think that'll be. I think the performance will be solved.
That I know nothing about. Do you think it's going to have repercussions on the compute side? What do you tell me in layman's terms the superconductor stuff?
I mean, I'm no physicist here, man, so I'm just like regurgitating what I'm reading and hearing. But what I understand about it is that like essentially like the way that like chips, CPUs, GPUs, etc., are configured today would largely be disrupted because like right now anything has resistance, and the superconductors are like no resistance. So you can have lossless energy transfer, which enables like all new levels of computation, like kind of like I think there's like a new it's I think there's like I think it still works kind of like how a transistor works, but it's like a
you don't generate heat or whatever.
Yeah, like a CPU or a GPU is just like a crap ton of transistors put together in a certain configuration, and then you can have these kind of like basically you have like physics that creates lots of these binary triggers like up or down, and then that converts to like hexadecimal, and then that converts to bits, and then bits convert to bytes, and then bytes are making up like everything that we interact with in a program, in a low level programming stack like like assembly or whatever. So there's like all these like stacks that you build up to build software, and this is like fundamentally disrupting like the physics bottom level of the stack, and in a good way.
Okay.
So that's what I understand.
My physics skills are way too weak to have at this point any semblance of a competent position on it. I'll need to dive into it, but yeah, like it's definitely looking like a serious breakthrough.
I mean, if it exists, I mean, the whole thing is like is it just like bullshit, or is it real, or so.
They definitely did have a little bit of a tussle there when it came to the authors, like with the published paper and then the other one without the first dude.
Yeah, it seems like it's getting politicized now too, because I think
Yeah.
like some of the labs that are saying they've reproduced it are in China. So now it's like politics is, worked its way
Yeah.
into science somehow.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyways.
Oh man. So anyway, back to the future search. So 10 blue links are
Yeah.
staying.
I think
I
so.
mean, what
I
else?
think so. I think so. Although I will say one thing that, that has been kind of underexplored, which is that so there's actually this interesting take from, do you know Stratechery, Ben Thompson?
I don't know. No.
It's like one of the coolest newsletters slash blogs on like
Who is it?
the strategy of bigger tech companies, Stratechery. You can search for that.
Stratechery.
Ben Thompson.
Oh yeah, I see it here. I think I've seen it before. I think I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen this logo before, the little pen thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
with the
I
pen.
don't.
Exactly. So like
I don't know it.
his take when he was talking about like some of the LLM advances, it's like that it's less akin to something that would, murder the current crop of search, but instead that it's something that's more closely akin to the movie Her, where you actually like in an artificial way create a new pseudo consciousness. And this is actually something that I think has been underexplored because I was you know what my second team was at AWS?
Alexa.
Alexa.
Yeah,
Yes.
I saw that on your
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
And so that basically was you had the voice assistants, but that unfortunately were, the tech, the intelligence just wasn't there. And so you had just a lot of handcrafted rules that, routed things to the appropriate handlers and so forth. But this was all like, if you've used Alexa, you do see that it was kind of very brute forced in some sense. And now
Yeah, I
if you,
agree. The experience isn't like it's not like next
well, it's not
level.
smooth. No, it's not next level. So maybe this is something where, you can build a whole different, assistant infrastructure that people can use to simplify their daily lives, like, bicycle of the mind and so forth, as Jobs said.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at this Stratechery too. This is an interesting. We'll put this in the show notes because this looks like a good
Oh, he's
newsletter.
extremely good.
Yeah, but yeah. So I was actually talking with somebody about the concept of Her with AI. I don't think I don't think it's anywhere near consciousness. I mean,
How do you define it? I mean, get a
yeah,
lecture
that's the debate.
and like 850 pages trying to get to the bottom of that. So, okay, the author of that doesn't think that it's conscious. So, okay, I'm digging that, but it's making some very good illusions in that direction.
It has the Chat GPT can sometimes have the appearance of consciousness because it'll answer sometimes in a way that's like, it
Yeah,
seems to have like a personality depending on how you
yeah,
instruct it to have a personality.
yeah,
But, you can like change its personality just by changing the prompt.
that's true. You can make it say wild things. At least you could before they, put guardrails.
Yeah. I mean, you still kind of can. You can still kind of like get it to do what you need it to do. But
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, I think consciousness,
it's a stretch.
that's such a like a philosophical discussion, but I don't know if tech can ever be conscious because tech, consciousness largely has to do with like feelings and emotions and like feeling physical sensations, having like cortisol and adrenaline and having like dopamine and serotonin like flowing through your bloodstream and having that like enter your brain and impact the way that your computer, your brain works. And then you have like neurons all throughout your body that are also kind of like,
Okay.
supplemental to your brain. And then you're feeling through those. So that's where it's like, maybe you can like simulate something that looks like it's conscious, but I don't know if, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong and Terminator could happen, but I don't know if you could ever have like a human consciousness experience through a computer
Okay.
interface.
Okay, fine. I dig
But
that.
do you like, do you have like an alternate perspective on that or?
Not really. It's just that it is a very complex philosophical question. Like it's certainly an emergent phenomenon, but like what exactly goes into it as an input for it to emerge is debatable. I don't know. I have no idea. Like I need to reread books. But what I will say is definitely that like with this level of technical capabilities, you could fundamentally rethink the like voice assistants and whatnot and just make that be so much more than they were in the first iteration.
Yeah, yeah. What does your gut tell you though? Like, forget the books. The books don't know anything. What does your gut tell you?
About tech being able to simulate consciousness or be
Or be
conscious.
conscious? Yeah, be conscious.
Well, I mean, because when you're talking about senses, you can you can input stuff into it, visual senses and auditory senses. You could. I mean, I don't see a hard reason for it not to be possible. It's
So
just
maybe it's a different kind of consciousness. Like
yeah.
maybe like imagine like I the way that I sometimes think about like different forms of life is like, as humans we always like make aliens, like this like humanoid sort of creature. But like imagine if, let's say like on a Jupiter like gas planet where it's like high high regularity of like electricity, lightning storms, and it's like full of some sort of like you know, hydrogen or like sulfuric gas or something, and it's just like this massive condensed gas object. And maybe the life form is like this jellyfish like creature. It's like a blob of jelly that like instead of breathing oxygen, it uses electricity to survive and consumes like the gas atmosphere, the sulfur gas atmosphere. And maybe like, you ever seen that alien movie where the aliens like do the blobs of ink? I forget what it's called. Arrival, I think. I think it's called
I don't
Arrival.
think I've seen Arrival,
Yeah, it's
but
like
okay,
the
I
metal
know what you're
ship
saying.
comes and it just sort of is like that big like spherical thing and it just sort of like floats and then the woman goes up there and they talk to her and she's like they talked to me but like it wasn't like speaking, it was something else.
Okay, I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like it's like we can't even possibly imagine what consciousness for that jellyfish creature on this Jupiter like planet would be because it's like not even the
Good.
same as it's not human consciousness, it's whatever the hell that is.
Okay,
So
yeah.
maybe we can build like a different form of consciousness that we're not like
Well, not a human one though. Okay. I
yeah,
see.
yeah, I could see yeah, that's like an interesting thought experiment.
Well, let's hope we don't find out and have it spiral out of control.
Yeah. You ever read so there's a Wikipedia, we can link to this in the show notes if my team can find it, but there's a Wikipedia for like the Matrix comic books, which is basically the story before the movie started. And they
Mhm.
tell the whole backstory of how like the Matrix happened.
Oh, nice. I want to dive into this. Like, yeah,
I'll give you the cliff
I'll look this
notes.
up.
So the cliff notes are that like basically like society was somewhere sort of like where we're at now and made humanoid robots and then gave the humanoid robots consciousness. But like every couple of years, new models would come out. So the humans would like take the old models offline and kill them basically, and then get new models. And at one point, one robot was like, "Well, I don't want to die," and then the human said, "Well, too bad. We need to upgrade you." And the robot's like, "But yeah, I don't want to die." And then it created this huge like robots life pro life movement, or like robots like rights. It was like a robots rights movement that happened. This is like a theoretical story in the Matrix prequel, the comic books or whatever. And so then a bunch of other robots realized that like all the robots kind of got on board with this robots rights movement, and then the robots eventually revolted. And sort of like this like revolution happens, and then eventually it kind of the humans eventually said, okay, like they gave them this spot in the desert, I think in the Middle East, and said, all right, this is your area. You can like live here and exist. And then it kind of turned into a slum of robots, kind of like that other alien movie. I think it was like Sector 8 or whatever, like, District 8 or whatever that one was called, where the aliens came
District
and
8,
then
I think, yeah.
their ship broke and then they had like the slum in South Africa, the alien slum. It was kind of like that, but for robots. But then what happened was the robots were like so much faster and smarter than humans that they've quickly built up the largest economy in Earth with and they owned like the largest Fortune 500 companies, and they became like the largest economic powerhouse out of their slum. And then they're like, you know what? We're not going to like deal with you guys anymore. And the humans so they started to have a war, and they got threatened. The humans got threatened from the war because they were like starting to lose. So then the robots at the time needed the sun, like they needed to charge from the sun. So the humans blew up bombs that blocked out the sun. So the robots wouldn't charge anymore. But
And then the robots just decided to use them for energy.
Exactly. Then the robots started harvesting the humans for energy. So that was like the prequel to the Matrix movie.
That sounds like something that would fit in nicely. Okay, I get this.
It's an interesting dialogue.
It's definitely interesting. Like I now need to to look at the entire like non-Cliffs notes, because now I'm just like getting excited about it, because I'm a big Matrix fan. You know, this is like one of the, when I was in elementary school, when I didn't have too many skills but big dreams, it was like either Mars or that. Like those would have been the things that I would have loved to work on.
You like to chase big ideas, man. I love it.
Yeah. Let's do search first.
Well,
even search is a big idea for a startup. So yes,
yeah, I mean
it may not be Mars, but
that's a bit, yeah. Search is a big one, man. That's not like, I mean, it's B2B, I guess. Like the way you're doing it is B2B, but it's not a small segment.
No, definitely not.
What's next for Omnisearch? Are you guys like raising? Are you hiring? What's your plans to scale, and what's new for you guys?
And now I think basically like the main thing is going to be hiring, because we're going to be looking to build out both the engineering team, and we want some ML experts, some full stack people. Like we want to have the right balance between doing really good R&D that kind of has the longer term benefits, but also the more tactical stuff like launching products, launching like smaller sub products, being on different platforms, AWS marketplaces, whatnot. So we want to balance these things out. And then obviously salespeople. So ideally, we want people that have had experience doing not just B2B, but maybe something that's search or related. Like we're content with our marketing at the moment. So I think that it's basically just going to be hiring for sales roles and engineering roles. And, like longer term, I would say like we still have the aspiration to be a multi-billion-dollar company, to do an IPO, and to basically become, in the B2B space at least, the best and most significant search company that there has ever been.
Nice. What's your it's some of these B2B companies, like the go-to-market strategy is kind of like the like how to find product market fit, and then like when you get that right recipe, how to scale it. Like that's kind of like the secret sauce, and it's not super, it's not like a 1-2, step 1-2-3 playbook. It's like very different depending on the market and the timing and all sorts of things. But like, what have you learned in terms of like finding product market fit, and where are you at in that cycle of like finding it?
I would say we're now pretty well validated. So like our initial two verticals were education, so edtech. That's actually our first one where we got our initial customers. That was such a good fit for what we were building. So we loved it because not only was it a great fit and the value prop was really clear, but also the cool thing was that unlike a bunch of other verticals, here you had a bunch of smaller, nimbler companies. So for us, being a not very well validated startup at that point, this meant a lot, because they were more eager to adopt us and to try us out and to give us a chance. So that got us off the ground. Media industry is a huge one. So like think broadcasters, think publishers, streaming platforms, whatever. So all these are really good. You've got then also home security industries. You've got e-commerce even. That's also a really good use case for us, and a bunch of different ones. So, I would say we're pretty well validated. We've got a lot of, conversations going on, even with big customers. I would say the main learning is like, it seems to me both from our experience and from, just observing really successful companies that are doing deep tech stuff in kind of the B2B segment, that in the end, you will have to focus on the big deals. Like PLG is great to get you off the ground, and doing self-service signups is really great, but eventually, like, you got to be able to sell into a big business and get a 200K.
So just to interject on that, I've actually subscribed to the opposite school of thought that
Yeah.
PLG is product-led growth for the listeners. So we've talked about product-led growth on other episodes, but essentially product-led growth is like building in features to your product that are like an onboard to your product. So the user doesn't have to talk to a sales team to use your product. They can just like go click a button, sign up, put a credit card in, and then there's like an onboarding ramp right into the product that helps them, like a wizard or something, or like a step 1, step 2, step 3 onboarding that helps them get set up in your product ecosystem. But doing product-led growth or PLG too early in the life cycle of a company, I think, is a disservice. That's at least the school of thought I subscribe to, because if you're not fully validated yet and you start to try to do PLG, like if it's not working, what do you start to troubleshoot first? Is it like your ads aren't the right copy? Is your landing page not right? Is your PLG not right? Or is your product and your product thesis as a whole not right? Like, how do you, like, where do you start to troubleshoot? So if you cut out the last two, or if you cut out the middle two, like you cut out all the, like the PLG and the sign up flow, the landing page flow, you just focus on getting the lead to a salesperson, and then the salesperson gets, and actually in an early product, the salesperson should be the CEO. So getting the lead to the CEO, and then the CEO getting that customer to sign up, and the CEO is onboarding that customer. That's like, I think in like early days, like when the CEO, the founder, when it's like, like a 5-person team or a 2-person team or whatever, like that's, I think, the way that it needs to be done. So that you can actually get that real-time feedback from customers, like, oh, this feature doesn't work, or I hate this, or I need this. And that's like, if you start to see a theme emerge from like one, like first customer, second customer, third customer saying the same things, and it's like obvious that you need to fix that because you're talking to them and they're giving you that info, but the feedback cycle might be like so much longer, or not even there, if you're trying to do PLG too early.
Yeah, I think that actually makes sense. And at the end of the day, that's kind of the way we did it. So we like do things that don't scale, the YC dictum. You always got to do that in the early days.
Yep. Cool, man. Well, this was a great episode, Marin. I'm really happy you came on here. Anything you want to close on? Like anything you want to plug? Obviously we talked a lot about Omnisearch, so we'll put in the show notes. We'll put a link to Omnisearch if anybody wants to go and check it out and book a demo. Anything else you got going on you want to plug here before we hop off?
Yeah, no, totally. We're hiring for a large variety of roles. So if anyone's interested, definitely shoot me a, LinkedIn connection. I check that all the time. I'm on Twitter too. So, anyone who wants to reach out and connect, even if it's just other startup founders looking to exchange ideas, always happy to do that.
Good deal. That's the episode.
Did you clear your cash flow?